All right, guys. So we're going to do a walkthrough of how I put together my daily watch list. So the first thing I do is I open Trade Ideas. As you guys can see on the left, I've got three primary scanners that I'm using for looking at gap or stocks. And then on the right, I've got my e-signal charts. And up in the corner, this is kind of a more info window that I can type in a stock. This is part of Trade Ideas to get information like float and that sort of thing if it maybe isn't already on my scanner. So starting with the top few gappers here on this regular gap scanner, this one sorts any stock gapping up or down more than 4%. So no filter except for gap. PHMD is at the top of the gap scan. I usually open up Market Watch, and I've got Benzinga open. So I can search on both of those platforms to see if I can figure out what the news is, the reason, the catalyst for the gap. So PHMD, search on Market Watch, and search on Benzinga, and let's see what we can find. Now, I also look pretty early on at the daily chart. Just scroll back a little bit. We've got the 200 moving average here at 178, kind of coming down. Right now, pre-market, we're at 160, so we're just below the 200, which is not ideal. I'd rather have us be above it. And the pre-market chart, we kind of had this first move up to 160, a pullback. This was after hours, and then opened up here around 2, and it's kind of been fading off that level. So, when we see that kind of thing, it's not really my favorite. It looks like the headline after hours was ICTV Brands announces definitive agreement to acquire the No hair removal brand. So that's the headline, which is good that there's a headline. But in terms of price action, we're kind of fading. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to write PHMD on my watch list. PHMD, 7.69 million share float, gapping up 43%. Headline, I paste in the headline. This is for all the students. And I'll say possible setups, but the pre-market chart is a bit weak. And the daily chart has the 200 EMA blocking a potential move, I think. All right, so that's our first one. Second one down, JAG-X. Now, sometimes I'll skip the first one, go right to the second one if the first one, has a very heavy float or just doesn't look interesting or something like that. So JAG-X, again, looking at the daily chart, we're kind of coming into resistance at that 200 moving average. Popping up to 135. High of 183 is the 200. So I don't like that, but I'll check the headline on it anyways. This one is a low float stock, which means that with a good catalyst, it can move quickly and potentially could break through any resistance on the daily. So the headline today, Jaguar Animal Health and Napo Pharmaceuticals announced details for proposed merger. All right, so I've got the headline on Market Watch. So when I look at this, sometimes these mergers can outline price, and that would effectively make this trade flat, but it looks like it's a letter of intent. Probably, it's non-binding, so there's still potential that we could have volatility in this name. Now, a stock like, what was it, ENH? What was that stock the other day? I can't remember it. Well, maybe we'll see an example today. Let's say UPH. Now, it doesn't look like we have any buyouts today, but in any case, a stock that gets bought out just trades flat. The price has been determined, so there's not going to be volatility anymore. We want volatility. So JAGX, 4.28 million share float, gapping up 26% on 19,000 shares volume. Headline, post in the headline there. And let me just flip back to this JAGX. We do have the 200 moving average, so I'd say possible resistance around 183, which is the 200 EMA, but above that, clear skies, and we still have 40 cents to that level. All right, so that one's a possible, that one's definitely a possibility. We'll see. All right, next one down, AUPH. Now, we've traded this one a couple times in the last few days, so I'm already sort of familiar with it. And I'm also familiar with JAGX. We've traded that a bunch of times. PHMD, we've traded as well. So it's very common, especially after you've been trading for several years, you'll start to get familiar with these names. JAGX, AUPH, CATB I see on the scanner, RADA, HMNY. Some of these stocks have been former runners. They're stocks that have made big moves. And that's actually what this scanner right here is for. This filters all of these stocks and shows me only the ones that are former runners. Now, this is former runners in recent history. So, some of these may have been former runners a little ways back and they're no longer on this scanner because it's just a limitation to the filters. Okay, so AUPH, nice gap there, 8 a.m. today. So it's a pharmaceutical stock, so the headline has kind of lots of pharmaceutical lingo in it. AUPH, 16.87 million share float, gapping up 24%. Here's the problem on 1.7 million shares of volume. Very heavy volume pre-market. Now, the only concern here is that it may be crowded. So when I say crowded, I mean that you're going to have a lot of traders trying to capture a piece of this move. You're going to have traders with a very strong short bias who say this thing is overdone, there's no way it should be priced at $5, it's going to fade, and they're going to be shorting it. Then you've got long bias traders who are going to be going long, and that creates a tug of war. It's not going to necessarily be the most clean setup in the first few minutes. Now, usually what I look for is the first pullback and the second pullback. The problem is this has already had a first pullback and a second pullback pre-market. So this is something you could have traded pre-market based on this level of volume. When the bell rings, it's not uncommon to see these dip down a little bit, and then we go for a red to green move. That's usually a safer setup, but I'm not 100% sure how easy this one will be to trade. It may end up giving us a really great setup, or it may end up fading and being choppy. I'll keep it on watch, close watch, but I'm just going to be mindful of the fact that it may be crowded. Okay, next one down, ALQA. 3,000 shares of volume pre-market. I don't really like the price range, not very interested in it, so I'm just going to skip over this one. ZUMZ, $20 stock, a little outside my price range on the other side. Check the headline on it, but this isn't something I would usually take a gap and go trade on. It's just going to be too thickly traded. ZUMZ. Yeah, so sales results posted yesterday. I think this will be a little bit whippy. SCYX. Right down here. Skipping over GURI. SCYX. Not a very good pre-market chart. Moving up and then coming all the way back down. So probably be volatile, but not something that I'm super interested in. Now, that's a good point on ZUMZ, that 37% short interest. You know, that's a good point. That's a fair point. But my concern would just be that this has the potential to give us false breaks. These are much more common with this price range. So I'll put the chart up here, and I'll keep it on watch for maybe a scalp on the first pullback. Let's see, where's my chart? There we go. ZUMZ. Okay. WPCS. Now, see if there's a headline on it. This one is sort of notorious for popping up and then fading. So I'm not sure. Backlog increases to 17.5 million by securing 3 million in new contracts during September. I mean, that sounds like an interesting headline. But again, hard to really know if that's going to give this one momentum. So I'll just say WPCS 4. Where'd it go? Oh, see, now it just popped off the scanner. Just moved out of the way because it's no longer gapping up enough. So, all right, well, whatever. HMNY, let's take a peek at that one. Because this one's a former runner, look at this day where it went from $8 all the way up to 16. That was a big move. All right, so HMNY. Actually, I don't see any headline on it today. There's not, it's a very small gap, so not surprising that there might not be a headline. RGSE, this one has been in play the last few days, gapping up a little bit, but I'm not a big fan of this daily chart. The way it squeezed up and then came all the way back down, I just think that's too risky. So as we get closer to the open here, the names I'm going to be watching, I'll keep an eye on JAGX. It's not the cleanest pre-market chart because of the way it popped up and came back down. I'll watch AUPH, which is a cleaner chart, but it's already a little extended. I'll watch ZUMZ. And then I think what I'll do is I'll keep my last chart open. I'll just flip through a couple of these real quick. Nothing there. DRAM, nothing there. So what I'll probably do is I'll keep my last chart open to pull up stocks that hit the high day Momo scanner. And you never know. Typically, some of the stocks that have been on our pre-market watch list, if they start to squeeze up, are going to hit this scanner early on. But there may be stocks that are under the radar that we're not watching that start hitting the scanner as soon as the bell rings. So we'll keep an eye out for those, see if we get a good setup. Maybe a little bit of a slow day. There's nothing that looks like a super obvious play, and that is sometimes the case. And we just kind of have to sort of play defense today, wait to see the momentum, and then if it's present, jump in and try to capitalize on those opportunities. And if it's not, then we just kind of sit on the sidelines and trade lighter and trade less until things start to improve, whether it's later this afternoon or tomorrow, whichever. Okay, so that's my watch list here, and that's kind of what I do pretty much every morning, putting together the watch list.